So the AI model, AI, artificial intelligence. So we want to show you how artificial we think it is and how much of it is intelligence, right? Is it really scary, or is it just, something you can, you're teaching a machine, and what it means and why we should all care about it, right? So big tech is really using it everywhere. And at a minimum, everybody else needs to understand what it is and what it can and cannot do. So, we're hoping to share some of that experience with you guys. We'll actually involve you in our own pipeline. So the way we're, tagging our data, for example, or doing other activities for AI, that's going to be workshop 2. So you see that it's not that much magic, maybe somewhat, but not not entirely magical. um, so yeah, we'll go into that totally. Now we're getting to the heart of these workshops, right? Like the interesting and difficult stuff, right? So we're going to show you how AI can just go out there, crawl your website, which is literally what we're actually experimenting with right now, right? And find data from your website and make a judgment. Okay, this tag is for, your population served. So that we can then match it, let's say, to some federal database, which is about vulnerabilities, social vulnerabilities in a certain sense is tracked, for example. And it can look up, whatever you have on your website, right? It's scrapable most of the time. But then how it tags it and how it comprehends it is completely a machine doing something with it, right? And there's going to be a limitation in how precisely it even captures it. And then once it gets put out there for potentially a match to you, like in terms of a government agency or a potential donor or a philanthropic organization or expertise, right? That is going to maybe train that community to do something. Whatever the sector is. So that cascades. If that initial information is imprecise or skewed, depending on who's actually doing the, let's say, the training of the model, and we'll go through that in the later workshops, is that, you have to teach AI to do a thing. So if you don't teach it well enough, it's going to learn whatever biases are built in, whatever the annotator knows, right? And so we're going to show you that pipeline of how it works. The next question is Roxanne's question, which is, what do you want us to do with it? What do you not want us to do with it, right? Maybe you don't want us messing around with it or putting it out there, but then somebody else will because it's public, right? So you might as well control it, maybe. So that's the flavor of the conversations we want to have with you guys, basically. And I will give the floor to Marcus or somebody else.
Yeah, I can jump in here to just summarize what Sumit was saying. Is that the whole, like with the workshop 2, and even starting with workshop 1, part of it is that with technology, there's the aspect, and especially with this intelligent technology, there is the aspect of what data it can automatically gather and the quality of that data. And then there is that layer of interpretation. Okay, what do we do with it? And what is ethical to even do with that data? And that's why we think it is critical to involve you at this very early stage, because as we look at this, there might be areas where somebody says your platform need to have a feature that allows an organization to say, delete my information or hide my information unless it's this type of organization that is looking for me. Or so there's that layer of what we are collecting, and is that correct? And how should that be collected to be ethical? That's one question to look at together. And the other question to look at together is, okay, once it's there, how would you like that information to be displayed, to exist, or be hidden? And, have that conversation around that. So the collection and the interpretation, and all sorts of concerns that obviously comes up, or excitement about, how certain information should be highlighted. So.
Yeah, I'll lastly add, I think some of this has come from, when we start projects, we've often been asked, can you come up with a list of all the community organizations we should reach out to? And people just keep asking that same question and question again. So I think a lot of this, and then that ultimately like means that they don't do as much engagement, the agencies, because they're spending a lot of time just coming up with a list. And I'm sure you're all familiar with that. So I think part of this is like, how do we get folks to stop spending so much time looking for a list and then actually just get out there and do the work? So that's part of the motivation. And then, I think going back to Sumit's point, yeah, so the when you if you're a 501c3, when you submit your taxes, that goes into the IRS's database, and there isn't that is public information, and then the IRS allows folks to download. So I don't know if you knew that already, but yeah. So like all of that information then is in a public database that people can download of like who's the organization, how many staff do you have, what's your budget. So that's also like information that's out there. But I think we're trying to figure out like what does feel right for folks to share, and like how does it feel right for folks to share it.
There's research going on at various elite universities, MIT, whatever, that we see that how do we flip the data paradigm on its head, right? So today, big tech, big companies just take everything for free and then monetize it, right? And Congress is just so behind or doesn't care or whatever, right? I mean, it's hard to move things through the government to actually regulate it. Technology also changes very quickly, so it's hard to keep up. But I mean, the opposite would be like me or you deciding exactly which of my data goes to who and when and why, right? I would have full control over my data. And Europe is trying a little more to protect people's privacy. So if we can maybe try to model some flip side from this group and others that join us, where you control what you want to show to who, and why and when, and how hard is that to implement and to execute, and what does that mean, as groups, right? Not as individuals yet, because it's hard to implement that, but maybe at least we can start to do something at a group level. I'm just throwing out blue sky ideas here, but